Welcome to the PDX files. Each week we dive into the weird and the unexplained here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. My name is Peej.
And I am Mac.
And Mac, what are we talking about today?
Something I just sort of stumbled upon. I can't remember how I found it. It wasn't even searching for anything to do with JFK assassination. You know, we've done a couple of those videos already, but this is really interesting. Something I found really interesting is forensic psychology and kind of that body language analysis.
Yeah.
And that's what this guy is going to bring here to us today. His name is Dr. G. I never heard of him before. But he goes over some really compelling evidence to suggest that maybe Oswald wasn't the only gunman, and maybe LBJ possibly had something to do with it.
Yeah, and you're right. We have talked about JFK conspiracy before, but it's kind of cool that there's so many layers to this that,
Yeah,
especially when you're coming in from an angle that may not have been, maybe available to you. Like this, his name is Dr. G.
Dr. G. Yeah, I'm sure he has a full name, but his channel is called Dr. G Explains.
All right. Well, let's listen to Dr. G. As usual, I've not seen this video that Mac found, and so my responses and my reactions will be authentic. Here we go.
All right, let's jump right in.
A slight fellow with some scratches and
Positively know nothing about this situation here. I would like to have legal representation.
So after he said, I'd like to have legal representation, you saw him purse his lips. Something like that. You're going to see him do this over and over again. And typically we associate this with disapproval, something about disapproval and sometimes disagreement. Let's watch this again, then we're going to keep going.
Situation here. I would like to have legal representation.
Yeah, there it is.
So there you see the disapproval again. And I want to highlight how strange this is, because disapproval is not the emotion we typically would associate with a situation like this. Yes, obviously he disapproves of the idea of being arrested. Nobody wants to be arrested, but that's not typically what we see. We typically see surprise, shock, fear, anxiety. There's a lot of different things that we see, and we're not seeing those right now. What we're seeing is disapproval and disagreement over and over again. I'll get more into what I think that means as we go, but just understand that look right there. That's what that means.
Well, I was questioned by a judge. However, I protested at that time that I was not allowed.
So another thing you're seeing is that some degree of confidence. He doesn't have his head hung down. He's not looking at the ground. He does tend to be looking at the different reporters as they're trying to interact with him. I'm sure it's overwhelming because there's a lot of people in there, but he does have some degree of confidence right now.
But during that,
And as he was saying, something about he wants legal representation, he leans forward. He really is trying to connect with the reporters as they're talking to him or as they're asking him questions. And I know back then probably you had to be close to whatever microphone they were holding, but it doesn't change the fact he's trying to do that. He could just avoid them altogether, which a lot of people do in these situations.
I was questioned by a judge. However, I protested at that time that I was not allowed. But during that very short and sweet hearing, I really don't know what the situation is about. Nobody has told me anything. Something I'm accused of.
And you keep seeing.
We keep seeing the lips. Yeah.
And what you're not seeing anything in the brow. That's what's surprising about this, is that typically when somebody's in a situation like this, there is sadness or surprise or anger. They're typically emotions. You're not seeing anything, which makes this feel like a performance. Now, sometimes when I watch trials or when I'm analyzing different criminals, I talk about how they're performing because they're lying. This doesn't seem like that kind of performance. This performance seems like he's expecting something and the situation isn't playing out like that. I'll explain more as we keep going, but this is very so.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know any of this kind of stuff before even watching this this episode here. I kind of knew a little bit about body language, but that idea of the disapproval of the not having any expression on the brow, his confidence in what he's doing, it is weird when you think about that, because you would think that if he was he was the lone guy, that he would be afraid, because they've basically got him dead to rights. He had just been beaten up by the cops, right? So there's a lot of reasons for him to be angry and scared. and he's not showing any of that. But he does look like it's like this is not how this is supposed to be going down.
I get that, and and I'm not gonna invalidate what Dr. G is saying, but I guess my take on Oswald, and again, this the reason we're watching this video is because it's another layer, right? But
Right.
my take on him is that he wants to be known, he wants to be famous for this, right? So that's to me
But
what would
yeah,
explain that, not creasing of the brow, so he's not, he's not afraid or anything like that. I'm seeing more somebody who's like, hey, I'm not getting more of what I feel I should be getting, or something to that effect.
Okay, possibly. I could see it
Right.
from that angle. All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll continue. We're skipping here a little bit, but so we'll continue from this point.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting way to respond to that. He was asked if he killed JFK, and he said that he hasn't been charged with that. So it's not exactly a denial. It's an evasive way of responding to the question, but it's a very interesting response. And so when I talk about that, it seems like there's a performance here. He seems like he's frustrated. Like the disapproval seems like frustration. It's like the situation is not what he expected it to be, or it's not playing out the way that he thought it would. There's something about this that doesn't seem to be meeting his expectations.
That's what I was saying.
But it's unusual. Like I said, I've never seen a criminal behave quite like this. And I know the situation is extraordinary, but human behavior tends to be pretty similar, whether it's something that's extraordinary like this or whether it's something that's more common that we see in the courts. There wouldn't be that much of a difference. There's something highly unusual about his behavior here.
The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
You have been.
Nobody said what?
Sir?
You have been.
Nobody said what?
Now, if you could tell right there, he froze for a second because there's a reporter, and this is probably very hard to hear. I can hear it with my headphones. Somebody says, "You have been charged, sir," because he said he hadn't been charged with anything yet. A reporter just corrected him on that. And immediately after that, you see him freeze. It really seems like something that he didn't expect. Watch this right here.
Asked me that question.
You have been.
Nobody said what?
Sir?
You have been.
Nobody said what? Okay, your hand, your hand. Okay.
See that? So to me, he seems shocked that he's been charged with this. He did a double take almost on that. Did you see his? I mean, he did kind of freeze up. He was like, and he was like that kind of a deal. So that to me says that, yeah, maybe he's not getting everything he wanted. Maybe he thought that it was going to go differently. Maybe he is frustrated because of that, but maybe he didn't expect to be this lone guy. Now he's the fall guy, right?
I see what you're saying. So if they're
Like he's involved probably, but probably not to the extent that he thinks that he thought he was going to be arrested for.
like not the lone operator is what you're saying, that
Yes.
he's thinking that, or you're thinking that he is, he knows that he's not the lone operator. There are other people involved. But when that reporter said you have been charged, then he responded the way he did as
Yeah,
video, because he's like,
it's-
hey,
yeah, it's just like it just clicked for him. It's like, oh shit, I'm the patsy, which is what he says about himself. Like he's the fall
Yeah.
guy now.
yeah, and maybe I wonder if that's going to be in this video. All right, we'll continue here.
And then after he said, "You have been charged," you see that reaction. He tucks his chin in, backs his head up. Now, that's a very strong, visceral reaction. Now, when he tucked his chin in, that's a way to protect your neck because you're starting to feel defensive and you're starting to feel vulnerable. Then he moved his head back almost to gain distance from what he'd been told because it was such a shock to his system. We're still not seeing a whole lot of it on his face. But once again, what we are seeing is this disapproval, this frustration, which is an odd thing to feel right there. Yes, this would be a frustrating situation, but not like this. There would be all sorts of other emotions that we would anticipate seeing that he's not showing. So there's something about this that's unusual. There's something about this that didn't meet his expectations, for lack of a better way of putting it. And that's what I'm seeing here. So I do think there's a lot more to this than what we're seeing. The idea that this was just him and that he's a lone shooter and that he maybe did this on his own, based on this behavior right here, I'm finding very unlikely. There certainly seems to be more to this.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and so again, this is just a very short a clip of what he kind of brought to the table, but it was very interesting. And I still go back to his reaction to that reporter telling him, "No, you have been charged." And he just I don't think it registered right away, and then it kind of took him aback a little bit. It probably shook his confidence a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll continue here.
Let's do it.
Johnson. This is where things get really interesting. Now we're going to start by looking at a couple of pictures. Then we're going
Look at that photo. That
to
is insane.
show you these pictures because I
Oh, no, this
think
is
it's fascinating.
LB Johnson.
Now, look
Yeah.
at this picture right here. What the way that I found pictures of LBJ and JFK is I just did an internet search, saved a first handful of pictures I found. I did not go hunting for ones that I thought would be interesting. I literally chose the only ones where they were not literally posing for presidential pictures. If you look at this right here, look at the body language between the two of them. Lyndon B. Johnson has his arm on his leg, trying to take up as much space as possible. He's leaning forward. He's staring down JFK. Kennedy, as you can see, looks like he's leaning back. He's disengaging. He seems, if anything, this body language says that he does not trust Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, I know this is a single picture. That's why we're going to go through some more. But look at this, the way that he's leaning back. This is someone who does not like the person he is talking to. It seems very clear that at this point, John F. Kennedy does not like LBJ. And if you look at Lyndon B. Johnson, he looks like someone that wants to be in absolute control in that picture.
Mm.
That's what that body language.
Yeah.
Legs are wide open. Look how much space I'm going to take up. Look how important I am. And as you can see, Kennedy does not seem to trust him, nor does he seem to particularly like him. Every part
He looks like Stephen Hawking.
is trying to back up. Now let's look at another picture. Now, if you look at JFK's face right here, like he looks like he's happy, he's smiling and whatnot, but look at the position of his body. Once again, backing away from Lyndon B. Johnson seems to some really genuine and unconscious desire to get away from him. Seems like he's backing up from him. It's very interesting that the dynamic between these two does not seem to be a pleasant one.
Yeah, I didn't get into this next one. It kind of goes there, but I mean, you can see there even there's like this confrontational thing, and even look at Bobby Kennedy's face, looking at LBJ, he does not trust him, and he's not well liked, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that.
Really?
Historical evidence, yeah, that they did not get along. You know, and it is interesting, and LBJ has always been that kind of guy who's kind of dominated the body language. You call him, you give him the treatment. The LBJ treatment, where he would. There's plenty of photos of this, where he'll bring someone from the Senate in for a talk in the Oval Office, and he's like lording. I mean, he was a tall guy. I think he was like 6'3", 6'4", and so that was kind of his MO. You know, I think it's kind of setting up what we're going to see here in a second. Is like, you know, clearly they were not liked, and he had a totally different worldview. As soon as JFK wanted to draw down the forces that were going to Vietnam, and LBJ, he increased that, and he escalated the war, which is not something that JFK would have done.
And obviously, the folks watching this on YouTube can see the images that Dr. G was referencing and that Mac and I are discussing right now. Here's my hot take on it. I mean, and obviously acknowledging what you said about that there's historical evidence that LBJ and JFK did not like each other or whatnot. Yeah. But two things. One, the way JFK's body language was, or it's more like the positioning of his body was, he was turning his torso so that he's got full view of LBJ. So that's, to me, it's more of a sign of a respect. It's like, rather than just turning your head, and that could almost just seem very disinteresting, or like you're disinterested. By turning your torso, like JFK does in those two photos, it's more about like, hey, I'm listening to you, whatnot. The other thing is the distance could be, what if LBJ had bad breath? I mean, we don't know. That could be. I mean, that's probably what in this photo.
It's certainly possible. That's certainly possible.
Photo that Bobby Kennedy's looking at, he's probably going, I'm getting the full brunt of this breath right now. But I can't say anything. But you can't. But his facial expression cannot hide it. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, this is on par for what LBJ does. He likes to try to dominate the body language, not debate, but the body language battle, essentially. And that happens a lot in politics, even today. Trump is really well known for that, that kind of handshake thing that he does. He sort of draws people in, and so it's when you're on the world stage, there's always kind of a performance like that. But the thing of it is, again, they were diametrically opposed in a lot of things when it came to the international stage. And, he was much more liked, LBJ was, by the generals and by the CIA and people like that. and JFK was not. He was not going in the direction. And even if you watch one of our previous videos about the potential involvement with JFK working with the Soviet Union on UFOs and UAPs, that was not kosher. That was not something that they were down with. So
they were not in agreement with that.
Not in agreement. So anyway, this next bit here, I think, is, again, it's certainly open for debate and discussion. You may not see it the way that Dr. G sees it, but I'm really curious to see what you think of this next part.
Okay, here we go.
Now let's get to the video. Now we're going to watch some of then President Johnson's message just a few days after JFK was shot. This was a Thanksgiving message.
All of us have lived through 7 days that none of us will ever forget.
Now that this is hugely consequential, but I do want you to understand the importance of some body language right there. After he said that none of us will ever forget, he shook his head no. That shows that this is a performance. Typically, when people are feeling it, they go that none of us would ever forget. They would shake their head at the same time they're saying it. The fact that he did it afterwards shows he's actually not really feeling anything right there. He's just going through the motions, that this is a performance. But that's not unusual for a speech. I just wanted to let you understand what you're seeing right there.
Yeah.
None of us
Kind of introducing that a little bit.
ever forget. We're not given the divine wisdom to answer why this has been.
Why?
So when he said why, he barely raised his eyebrows a little bit. As I've said before, we raise our eyebrows to put emphasis on things so that people will pay attention to what we're saying. So as far as the why, it seems like he's not as interested in the why as the part. So watch this.
Given the divine wisdom to answer why this has been. But we are given the human duty of determining what is to be.
So what's coming next? That's what he wants to focus on. And that's where the eyebrow raise came. So he doesn't want you to ask why. He wants you to think about what's next.
What is to be for America, for the world, for the cause we lead, for all the hopes that live in our hearts. A great leader is dead.
That was the most consequential part of this entire thing. We're going to talk about it. Watch this again.
Live in our hearts. A great leader is dead.
This is what we call a tongue. Sometimes it can look like this. Sometimes it can look like that, where people stick their tongue out. There's really only one reason that I know of in terms of body language that people do this, and we do that when we think we've gotten away with something. Now, I know that is a big conclusion to come to just based on a little bit of body language.
What are you? I say I already know that you're not going to be in line with Dr. G here.
Well, what do you think I'm not going to be in line with Dr. G on?
Well, the tongue shot, and I did look that up. It is a thing in the body language analysis, and he is a forensic psychologist. So it's when he says that, and I'm just an idiot over here. I didn't know anything about this stuff. That is very interesting. Now, it could be that his lips were just dry, but I don't think so, because he doesn't do that a lot. And that's a tell right there that I think was probably it was unconscious, is what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you didn't see LBJ every day,
Right.
so who knows if this is not something that he does all the time, regardless of what Dr. G is interpreting it to be. And again, I'm not trying to invalidate what he's saying. The thing about this speech, though, I mean, this is somebody who's on TV, and I've seen people, impassioned people, giving speeches, but because they want to get the message across, they want to kind of temper their emotion attached, because otherwise you become just kind of like just a crying mess if you're trying to be so emotional or letting the emotion show. You might not necessarily, you might actually be seeing like what that Congresswoman Katie whatever, who was parodied by Scarlett Johansson because of how she
Yeah.
State of the Union rebuttal. You don't want to be like that, so it's
Actually, just on an aside, the funniest rebuttal ever was Marco Rubio. Remember when he
and he was drinking water and
his mouth was so dry because he was so nervous, and he like goes down under the screen and he goes, gets a like nothing ever happened. That was one of the best moments ever.
Anyway, but my point is that when you're giving a speech to the American, he's addressing the nation. He wants to be, I don't know. I would probably do the same thing, like lean more towards professionalism, being a little bit more stoic. Yes, it's a tragedy, etc. But they would want the American people would want somebody who's got it together.
Oh
Versus
no, I get that. I get that. I think where he's coming from is from a perspective, see, because this is what he does for a living. So
oh
he
yeah,
looks at other criminals and he looks at when people talk, and he does stuff on Trump and other leaders as well. But
copy.
this is so he's looking for those ticks and those tells that happen in the body language. So I agree with you. I don't think he's a particular great speaker, but he's and the words I'm listening to, they all sound right. They all sound good, but it's how you he's thinking about stuff at the same time. He's not a robot, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting to sort of look at the analysis, even though Dr. G doesn't look particularly good in that still that we got going on there. But anyway,
All right.
yeah, let's keep it going.
But the tongue jut doesn't mean a whole lot else. So the idea that he did this in that context, right after he's talking about him being dead, and it looks like he's doing a sign for what we do when we get away with something, really is fascinating to me, because sometimes people bite their lips or they lick their lips because their mouth is getting dry. That specifically looks like a tongue jut. Let's watch that again.
That live in our hearts. A great leader is dead. A great nation must move on. Yesterday is not ours to recover, but tomorrow is ours to win or to lose. I am resolved.
Now, as he was saying, to win or to lose, that seemed intentional. So the performance aspect, he has some idea that he needs to use his body language, which lends credence to the idea that
Yep.
sneaky tongue jut was truly an accident. Watch that again.
A great leader is dead. A great nation must move on. Yesterday is not ours to recover, but tomorrow is ours to win or to lose. I am resolved that we shall win the tomorrows before us. Our factories flourish. Our homes are safe. Our defenses are secure. We live in peace. The goodwill of the world pours out for us. But more than these blessings, we know tonight that our system is strong.
Now, we did see a slight smile just now. Let's watch this again.
Than these, we know tonight that our system.
Hey, smile just right there before that.
Strong. Now, that could be because he wants people to feel good about that. It's possible he wants people to reflect smiling, so he's doing that intentionally. But it does seem a little bit odd in this context.
System is strong, strong and secure. A deed that was meant to tear us apart.
There was the smile again when he says a deed.
Strong and secure. A deed that was meant to tear us apart.
So as he's saying a deed that
Slight
was
smile.
or there is a slight smile. Some people call it Duper's delight, potentially.
I think that looks like Duper's delight to me. I think he's. I don't know. I'm probably buying way too much into it because it kind of fits my narrative. But I do think that the LBJ had something to do with it, and I think you can't tell everything. There's nothing conclusive from anything that we're going over here, but it kind of meets the pattern, and it does. He is acting a little weird. Let's just say that if you're looking at it from just a body language perspective.
Got it. And again, that's to your point. This is what Dr. G does, not just on LBJ, but others as well. And
Yep.
he's not going to be Dr. G if he wasn't good at his job, I guess. But let's bring this home here.
A great test. On Saturday, when these great burdens had been mine, only ours. The first two citizens to call upon me and to offer their whole support were Dwight D. Eisenhower and Harry S. Truman. Since last Friday.
There's another one.
Again, looking like he got away with something. There's the
Tongue jet.
Watch this again.
Burdens had been mine, only ours. The first two citizens to call upon me and to offer their whole support were Dwight D. Eisenhower and Harry S. Truman. senseless.
So there was the tongue jut again. Now, that tends to be what we do when we get away with something. The only times he's done it when he's talking about the assassination. So you see it again. I personally find it fascinating because there really is not a good explanation for a tongue jut other than people do it when they think they've gotten away with something. I don't
That
know
is
another
interesting.
explanation for that body language wise.
Right?
Maybe
Yeah.
he's trying to wet his lips, but to me, it doesn't look like that. To me, it looks distinctly like a tongue jut.
Eisenhower and Harry S. Truman.
All right, let's go ahead and stop here. Hopefully, this is helping you better understand some of the behavior and body language that we saw. But what I want to talk about now is the conclusions. So, based on everything that we saw from Lee Harvey Oswald and Dr. Curtis, the idea that he was the lone gunman that did this, or that there was one gunman that did this, is impossible. I do not believe that that's the case. Based on the body language from Lee Harvey Oswald, it was very peculiar. He clearly was part of something bigger. He knew more than what he was saying. Now let's go on to Lyndon B. Johnson. Based on what we saw today, I personally believe that Lyndon B. Johnson was involved in the assassination of JFK.
Boom. Confirmed. Well, certainly not confirmed, but I definitely think that it provides, again, another, it is kind of like an onion with this particular assassination. It's not clear cut. There's so many different ways that you can go. There's so many different ways that the government kind of botched the situation just right after, and then for years after that. And even today, they still don't want to let us know all the things that actually are in the archives about this. They're still classified. So, was LBJ involved? Maybe not. Obviously, just this Dr. G with his analysis doesn't mean anything, I guess. And the long run, it's his own opinion. It's not. I think he does things at the very beginning of this video, talking about. It's not trying to psychoanalyze anybody. It's not meant for that. It's just his experience as a body language expert. So, but if you look at it, it's really interesting. I think the photos. I mean, I know you talked about maybe it's JFK showing respect. It didn't look like that to me. It looked like he did not want to be near that guy, and it looked like, again, LBJ trying to use. And if you look it up, the LBJ treatment. That's what he does. He tries to get in people's faces, and he tries to use his physical dominance to try to do that kind of stuff. So, again, did he have something to do with it? I say he probably did.
Okay.
At least that's my opinion.
Well, that's you and Dr. G who would think. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a like and share it across your socials to help get the word out about our show. If you hadn't already done so, please subscribe, and on YouTube, click that notification bell to make sure that you don't miss out on future uploads. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.